Hi, I'm Mike Burke, and I'm 42 years old, and I have cystic fibrosis. And for those in the cystic fibrosis community, you know that that's a pretty rare thing. I just wanted to share a little bit about my life with CF, and you know, just been asked to share that story because there just might be some lessons, some hard-fought lessons that I learned that maybe we can avoid for the next generation. So I was born in 1970, and at about 6 weeks old, I developed a persistent cough. As my mother would explain it, it was the nastiest persistent cough she had ever heard. I remember she's a mother of 4 now, so I had 3 older brothers, so this certainly wasn't normal in her book. You know, you hear the cough, and it's something you'll never forget, especially from an infant. So this cough persisted, and they really didn't know what to do about it, so they went to the doctor off and on for months, and the cough never went away. In addition to that cough, my mom noticed that my diaper was particularly bad looking. Now again, she's the mother of 4, so she's used to all that. But this stuff was like from an alien or something. So obviously they were very worried, finally go to the doctor, and they just didn't know what it was. So they started doing all kinds of elimination tests, really starting with allergies. So the family got involved. You know, my uncle would make different kinds of foods based upon the allergy that we were trying to eliminate. And through all the testings through the months, nothing was coming up. I still had the cough. I still wasn't digesting food. And I actually started getting worse. So at about 13 months old, it got so bad, I came down with pneumonia for the first time. And landed in the hospital, so I'm a little one in the hospital. Again, nobody knows what's going on. They try the antibiotics, but nothing's working. Progressed a few more months, and I was in the hospital 4 times now with pneumonia by the time I'm 18 months old. The doctor finally put 2 and 2 together. He saw heard the persistent cough, saw that I wasn't gaining weight, and told my mom and dad on that next visit, I was about to go in the hospital again, the doctor said, I know what it is, go to Cardinal Glennon Hospital tomorrow. So, you know, my folks knew it was something serious, although the doc wouldn't say what it was. So they go to Cardinal Glennon Hospital, and they test me for cystic fibrosis. At the time, we didn't have genetic testing, so they did a sweat test. The chloride content, the salt content in the CF body is really high. So they simply do a sweat test. And it was confirmed right away. The salt content in my body was extremely high. So they gave him the quick and dirty diagnosis, but didn't tell him what it was all about, so they're waiting. And I just want you to picture your parents, mom and dad, you're in the hospital, your child's been coughing constantly for 18 months. My mother was so worried that I was crying so much and coughing so much that someone would call the police on her that maybe I was being abused. It was that severe. So they know something very serious is going on. The doctor's hush-hush for the moment. And when he comes out, he tells you that your child has this disease, this genetic disease, and at best, he'll see kindergarten. So the life expectancy is just a few years. And I just want you to imagine hearing that as a parent, thinking that the best thing could have been, hey, we know what it is now and we can fight it. Yet when they're told, it's a pretty grim outlook. There was no cure. There was very little general knowledge about the disease. All they really knew was that the salty babies would die. And there was so very little treatment. And there was one doctor in the entire area who knew anything about cystic fibrosis. And thank God for him, because he volunteered his time. So they get the diagnosis, and you know, what are you going to do? There's not much to be done. My parents could have very easily fell into hopelessness and despair, but it just wasn't in them to be that way. And they did receive a lot of support from Grandma and Grandpa and my aunts and uncles. So they were really blessed with a great family. So the doctor gets me on enzymes, digestive enzymes, which is one of the medicines they had. And immediately my personality changed. I wasn't crying, and I just was not pain. You know, malnutrition causes pain, so I didn't have that pain anymore. And I started to put on weight, and they tried all kinds of medicines for the lung problem, and it was just enough. They knew just enough to quit that persistent cough. So I was able to pretty much lead a normal childhood from that point on. So we got some pretty good news through the years. The CF life expectancy would increase a bit each year. And so, you know, when I was 5, the life expectancy was 7. When I was 9, it was 11. So that was really good news for my family. Still, a life expectancy of childhood isn't great, but it's better than 2 or 3 years. So my family had great encouragement. I was lucky enough that I didn't really realize that I was much different. I took medicine, but I got to play soccer and football and whatever else we played in the neighborhood. When my life changed is when I became, you know, a teenager. And you got to remember that there was no internet around, so it was kind of hard to find information. But when I got old enough to go to the library by myself and start really thinking about this thing, it hit me pretty hard. And in particular, I can remember right around my 16th birthday. Maybe because 16 is a landmark birthday, things are changing, you're learning how to drive. I saw that the CF life expectancy was 18 years old. I'm 16, the life expectancy is 18. And I liken my reaction to a midlife crisis. What happens in a midlife crisis is the middle-aged person sees their mortality, and they start reacting as a result of that. And I started reacting as seeing my life expectancy just a year or 2 away. So I really didn't have a midlife crisis. I had an end-of-life crisis. And you know, I didn't act wild, and I didn't really go crazy, but I just let this life expectancy seep into my decision making. I started thinking more short-term than long-term. You know, why study so hard in high school? I'm never going to get to college. What girl would want to be with me? You know, to put up with this disease, you know, the coughing, the medicine, and the life expectancy of just a few years. I really put those burdens on myself, and no matter the encouragement I got, I just couldn't see beyond those couple years. But you know, my family was encouraging, and my father simply wouldn't let me think like that. I don't remember the story, but he remembers it very clearly. I think I told him, "Dad, I'm not going to college. What's the point?" And he said, "Hogwash, you're going to college and you'll do well." And through that support, I did go to college. And actually, I did very well. I went to a 4-year. I went to graduate from University of Missouri in Columbia, and got a job right away. So it was a really exciting time, although now I'm 22 years old, and the life expectancy is 24. As I'm going through my 20s, when I was 24, it was 26. When I was 26, it was 28. So it's still very hard to see life long term. So I kind of acted accordingly. You know, I didn't think that what I was doing in these years would have any impact on me later, and quite frankly, I didn't care. I wasn't taking the medicine I was supposed to be taking. I wasn't exercising the way I was supposed to be exercising. I just put that all aside. I really kind of just abandoned taking care of myself and thinking about cystic fibrosis. One good thing that came out of this disease, the thing that I always knew is a curse, was that it pushed me to do things that aren't normal. And some of these things turned out to be really good. Like I wanted to see the world, before I was going to die. So I moved out to Colorado, and I really grew up out there. I had to do things on my own. I didn't have all my family to take care of me, so I had to become a man, and I did. But I was also driven to climb 14,000-foot mountains. What's the point in climbing an 8,000-foot mountain when there's a 14,000-foot mountain out there? And I don't think I would have that drive without cystic fibrosis. And later on, that drive would prove pretty significant in changing my life. Well, I was doing really good in my career throughout my 20s. I was in the hotel business, and I was transferred to Richmond, Virginia. I had received a nice promotion and a new job. It's pretty neat when you're living in Colorado and the company pays for your move, and they fly you out there and they treat you to a suite. So I got to live in a 4-star hotel for 3 months while I was looking for an apartment. How much better is that? I had my laundry done, I had 4-star meals, valet parking my car. I can actually remember complaining that I had to wait for my car to be brought up by the valet. So I was pretty spoiled. I had some pretty wonderful people come into my life, and I always just thought they came into my life because I was charming and good looking. And of course, looking back, I know that there's only 2 people in my life who think I'm charming and good looking. That's my wife and my mom. So I often wondered, why did these very important people come into my life just when I needed them? And that's something that has stuck with me. People are attracted to the fact I kind of struggle and live well with this disease. The thing that I feared the most, which was people abandoning me because I have the disease or walking away and not being able to handle it, actually attracts people to me. And it's mostly in the way I handle it. I really try to have a really positive attitude about my life with CF. Even when I wasn't real comfortable with it, I had a great attitude. And while I wouldn't share CF, I had a good attitude, and that attracted people in a really neat way. It didn't scare them at all. It actually made them want to be involved, raise money, and help me with the emotional struggles in life.
Recording, slate.
Where did I leave off? So I'm just going to pick up. Okay, I got you. I think I know where to go. Yeah, I'm just thinking how I can transition.
All right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Mike Burke, and earlier we were talking about growing up with cystic fibrosis. And I think we kind of left off when I was in my 20s, and I had received a nice big promotion, and life was going pretty good. And at least from the career side, personal side, I just, still struggling with living with this disease that I was pretty convinced was going to kill me. At least that's what the life expectancy said. So I'm 30 years old, and I'm doing really good at work, I get a great new promotion, move across the country, living in a 4-star hotel, and about midway through that year, I got a phone call from the local cystic fibrosis chapter. It was a dad whose son had cystic fibrosis, and I don't know how he found me because I was not wanting to be involved. I was pretty wrapped up in myself, and I just didn't want to share my story. And he says, Mike, I'd like you to come speak at our black tie gala. And I was thinking to myself, well, why me? What's the point? What have I done that's so special? So being the selfish guy I was, I asked him that question. I said, well, why do you want me to speak? And he was kind of shocked that I would even ask. So I saw the look on his face, and he said, well, Mike, you're alive. And it struck me that that was special, that I was 30 years old and alive. And he further reminded me that I was pretty healthy, and I had a very successful career. So I stepped out of my comfort zone there, and I agreed to do the black tie gala. And in doing that, I had not been paying attention to cystic fibrosis statistics or medicine or really anything in the community, so I had to get myself educated. And I'm looking through all of the statistics, and I remember I had just had my 30th birthday, and the life expectancy was 28. So this is the first time in my life that I'm beyond the life expectancy. So for so long, I was chasing what I thought was this death sentence. And all of a sudden, I've gone beyond it. And it was a real eye-opener. I mean, just the light bulb went off in my head like an atomic bomb. And the thought was, man, I just wasted a lot of years of my youth worrying about this thing, making decisions about something that never happened. And this image reoccurs in my head all the time. And even nowadays where I think I'm doing pretty good, but I get a little sad or whatever about the condition, I remember that I looked, my thoughts were like a dog chasing his tail. You've seen the dog, and it just starts running in circles, and he never catches his tail. And if he did catch his tail, well, there would only be more pain involved there. So I just kept that image in my head to make sure I never acted like that again and never thought like that again. So I kind of made a promise to myself to never let cystic fibrosis rule my life that way again. I can't avoid it. I can't avoid the disease. I have it. There's no cure. I take lots of medicine, but I don't have to let it rule my life. So I was looking for a way to, live normally, do something that everyone could do, yet do something very special, something that actually not a lot of people wanted to do or maybe even could do. And, running as a kid was more of a prescription than a hobby or a passion. I had to run to clear the airways. So when you run, you breathe heavy and you cough, and that moves this thick mucus out of the lungs. So running is the best therapy around. So I started running, and of course I was bored, and running to run just isn't a lot of fun all the time. So I thought, you know what, I need a challenge. What can I do to make it fun? So cystic fibrosis, it challenges me to do more better. So I was like, well, I guess I could run a 10K, or I guess I could run a half marathon, but what's the challenge in that? So I decided I would run a marathon, and that's 26.2 miles nonstop. And I decided that was a big enough challenge. So I just started running further and further, got a little help from a local running store, and that was a tremendous help. But I was on my own. I just wanted to do it. And the further I ran, 8 miles, 10 miles, 13 miles, 18 miles, this confidence just bubbled up inside of me. And that confidence grew every time someone would ask me, why are you doing that? I can't believe you're running that far. And I just, through that running, the confidence came, and I just knew that no matter what I did, cystic fibrosis, I can't control. But I can live a great life now while I have my health, and that's what I was going to do. So I was really surprised that when I started talking about CF, when I would let people know that they were, I don't know if inspired's the right word, but they sure had a real positive experience with it, and they connected to me, especially runners, because they know how hard it is. So I go down to my first marathon in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I met a bunch of people the night before. They kind of had this award banquet. It was a club, and they were so excited that I was taking on this challenge. A lot of these people had run many, many marathons, hundreds as a matter of fact. So they were excited I was new to the sport. And there's this great picture that I keep close to me. And it's a picture of Jim Ryan, is the first man who broke the 4-minute mile mark in high school. And the crowd around him is going crazy. And the man who had the stopwatch timing him is jumping up in the air and just full of elation. But the look of pain on Jim Ryan's face is amazing. there's a picture like that of me crossing the finish line at the Tulsa, Oklahoma Marathon. I was hurting. I had this look of pure exhaustion on my face. But what I didn't notice at first was the lady I had dinner with the night before, telling her my story, was in the background, her arms raised, running behind me. And I looked at that picture, I'm like, how can that be? How can this woman, in one conversation, be that impacted? And it really got me thinking. So I was opening up to my story, and through my mom's involvement, she got me on the news and in the newspapers, and something very special happened. I was running along at my local favorite spot, and this gentleman passed me, and I knew of the man. I knew him to be a very talented runner, much faster than me. And he looked back a couple times, and he stopped and waited. And I caught up to him, and he says, "Hey, are you Mike Burke?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Mike Burke. Who are you?" And he said, "My name is Mike, and I saw your story on the news, and I almost quit running this session because I just got a lot of aches and pains, and I'm getting old." And he said, "When I saw everything you had to go through, I kept running, and here I am. I'm training for another marathon." He's like, "Can I run with you today?" And we ran a couple miles, and of course he slowed down for me. And again, I was amazed at me being a slow, average runner, that this guy who was really good would be impacted by my story. It really helped me come out of my shell, out of that selfishness, and to see I had something to offer. What really sealed the deal, though, for me to speak to others and unabashedly, is I was part of a PBS documentary on running. So PBS followed a training group that I coached for 18 weeks. Every Saturday, they were interviewing me. They were interviewing the people around me. It was a lot of fun. And after that documentary aired, and I believe it aired nationwide, a lady called the running store that I coached for looking for me. She's like, "I want to talk to that Mike Burke guy." And so they got us in touch, and her daughter had been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis much later in life, which is really rare. And so she had asked if I'd speak to her daughter. I said, "Well, yeah, I will, but she's not going to want to hear from me, especially because you told her. Moms can only do so many things before the kids rebel." So I called her, and it was a hard conversation. She really didn't want to talk to me. So I just said, "Hey, I've been through most of the things that you're feeling. I felt lonely, I felt frustrated, I felt hopeless. If you feel any of those things and you want to talk about them, you call me anytime." And she opened up right away, and we talked for a couple hours, and she was feeling all those things. And I just asked what I could do, and she really didn't know. Bottom line is she was being kind of mistreated by the doctors in terms of what they're doing for her. So I got her set up with the doctors, and I made an appointment for her. And I didn't know if she would go because she was just in a bad place. So a couple weeks went by, and I was just, praying. She went to the doctor, my doctor, who is one of the best in the country. But I didn't know if she would, and I got a phone call from her. And she was this whole different person. She was not sad. She was not hopeless. She said that the doctors were going to put her on all new medicine, new therapies, told her that she wasn't going to die next year. As a matter of fact, she was probably really lucky with this case of CF she has, because they didn't find it till she was 40, so she's probably going to live longer than most. And she had never heard that before. It had never been given any kind of hope. And she had daughters of her own. And the daughters were seeing this despair in her mother. And that's the one thing I for sure wanted to help her with. So I see this whole new attitude in her. I can hear it over the telephone. And she was very thankful, and I thought I had done something really special. My head got real big, and I realized that there were so many people involved to get her to that spot. I was just one tiny little cog in her life, but I did care. And all the people around her cared. Her mother was so persistent. And her mother approached me, and I had to give a hoot. You know, I could have walked away from that situation, and I probably would have a number of years earlier. But other people inspired me to get involved, and I really wanted to be involved. And we helped change her life. And that's something very special. I'd never been a part of changing someone's life right there on the spot. And I knew I had to try more of that. I don't know if I do it well, but if I can do it one more time, everything will be worth it. Well, I really appreciate you hearing my story, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.